A lion in a hospital carrying a baby. It sounds like something out of a movie, but this is a real-life event that left doctors and nurses in tears. What drove this wild beast to walk into a place of healing? And more importantly, what shocking truth did the nurse discover that changed everything? Stay with us as we reveal this incredible and heart-stopping story of survival, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between nature and humanity. In an ordinary hospital, where the focus is always on healing humans, something extraordinary happened that would forever change the lives of those involved. It was a day like any other when hospital staff went about their usual routines, unaware of the profound and emotional event that was about to unfold. Out of nowhere, a lion walked into the hospital with its baby in tow, creating an atmosphere of awe and confusion. The lion's entrance was unlike anything the staff had ever seen before. Its presence alone was enough to cause a stir, but the sight of the baby lion cradled gently in its jaws left everyone stunned. Doctors, nurses, and patients stopped what they were doing to watch in disbelief as the majestic creature moved through the hallways. Some feared for their safety, while others were simply too shocked to act. But this wasn't an ordinary visit. The lion wasn't here to cause harm. It was here to ask for help. As the lion approached the nurse's station, one particular nurse, known for her compassionate nature, instinctively stepped forward to assess the situation. Little did she know, this moment would change her forever. The nurse's initial fear soon turned into confusion as she noticed something extraordinary. The baby lion, which appeared weak and injured, was not just a random cub seeking attention. There was a deeper connection between the baby lion and the nurse, a connection that would lead to a heart-wrenching revelation. The nurse, who had worked at the hospital for many years, had seen her fair share of unusual cases, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to uncover. She recognized the baby lion, not because of its physical traits, but because of a very personal and emotional connection that she had with it. Years earlier, she had cared for a similar lion in the hospital's wildlife treatment center, nursing it back to health after a near-fatal accident. The bond that had formed between her and that lion had never been broken. And now it appeared that this lion, the baby's mother, had returned to seek her help once more. But there was something more. The reason behind the lion's visit was not just about physical injury. It was about love and sacrifice. The baby lion had been badly injured, but its wounds were not the result of an attack by humans or another animal. The injury was caused by an unfortunate accident that had happened far from the hospital. The lioness, in an act of desperation, had carried her baby for miles, hoping to find someone who could help heal the wounds that were slowly killing her cub. What made this story so emotionally impactful was not just the extraordinary nature of the event, but the deep bond between the nurse and the lion. The nurse had dedicated her life to helping animals, but she had never experienced anything like this. The emotional weight of the situation was overwhelming. The lion, knowing instinctively that this was the one person who could save its baby, had risked everything by bringing it to the very hospital that had once healed its own wounds. The nurse, with tears welling up in her eyes, could hardly believe what was happening. In a strange twist of fate, the lion had come back to the very place that had once given it a second chance at life. But this time, it wasn't just the lion that needed help. It was its baby, and the nurse was the only one who could make a difference. In that moment, the nurse realized the incredible responsibility she had been given. It wasn't just about saving the life of the baby lion. It was about honoring the bond she had formed with the lioness all those years ago and ensuring that her legacy of compassion and care lived on. This incredible story of love, sacrifice, and destiny is one that will resonate with anyone who believes in the power of compassion and the unbreakable bonds between animals and humans. It was an ordinary morning at the hospital, with the usual hum of activity filling the air. Nurses moved swiftly down the corridors. Doctors were reviewing patient charts, and the quiet chatter of patients echoed in the waiting area. But suddenly, everything stopped. The front doors of the hospital swung open, and there, standing in the doorway, was an unmistakable figure, a lion. At first, no one could believe their eyes. The massive creature stood tall and proud, its golden mane gleaming in the hospital's sterile light. In its mouth, it gently held a small, limp body, a baby lion, barely clinging to life. The lion's eyes scanned the room, filled with a mixture of urgency and quiet resolve. It had come for help. The initial shock was palpable. Hospital staff froze in place, eyes wide, unsure of how to react. Some of the nurses instinctively took a step back, while others rushed to grab any nearby tools they thought could be useful, unsure of what kind of situation they were about to face. A few patients in the waiting room gasped and quickly stood up, their hands raised as if trying to shield themselves from the lion's gaze. Some whispered to one another, wondering if this was a prank or if their eyes were deceiving them. The lion did not seem aggressive. It didn't roar or make threatening movements. Instead, it seemed calm, even gentle, though its eyes reflected a certain desperation. It walked into the hospital as if it had been here before, moving gracefully past the stunned staff and heading towards the nurse's station. Its every step was a reminder that something out of the ordinary was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes. One nurse, a seasoned professional who had worked in the hospital for many years, was the first to overcome her shock. She stepped forward, slowly and cautiously, trying to read the lion's body language. She knew that in moments like these, staying calm and composed was crucial. But the sight of the small, fragile cub in the lion's mouth struck her deeply. Her heart raced as she approached the animal. In the midst of the confusion, a patient, who had been quietly observing the scene, whispered, "Why is the lion here? What does it want?" The air was thick with tension, yet there was an undeniable sense of awe. Some onlookers were transfixed, not out of fear, but out of sheer wonderment. It wasn't every day that a lion walked into a hospital, and the surreal nature of the moment made it feel as though they were witnessing something extraordinary, something beyond human understanding. The hospital security team, hearing the commotion, rushed to the scene, unsure of what to do. But before they could intervene, the lion paused and glanced at them, almost as if acknowledging their presence. The tension in the room began to melt away, replaced by a strange sense of understanding. This was not a wild animal looking for trouble. It was an animal in need, an animal that had traveled far, bringing its precious cub in search of the only help it could find. Some of the staff, still too stunned to act, stood in awe, while others began to slowly approach the lion, understanding that something far beyond the ordinary was taking place. The nurse who had stepped forward could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her. She knew that this lion had come to her for a reason. The baby lion's condition was serious, and the urgency was evident in the lioness's protective gaze. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. The lion had arrived, not as a predator, but as a mother in search of compassion. The hospital staff, caught between fear and wonder, could only watch as the lion continued its journey through the hospital, a true testament to the unpredictability of life. The baby lion, cradled carefully in its mother's mouth, was in a critical condition. Its small, fragile body appeared weak and battered, and it lay limply, barely moving. The once vibrant and playful cub had been reduced to this state, a far cry from the lively creature it must have been only days before. Its fur was matted with dirt and dried blood, and its breathing was shallow, as if each breath was an exhausting effort. The small body trembled ever so slightly, signaling the pain it was enduring. As the nurse stepped closer to examine the baby lion, she noticed the severe injuries. The cub's side was bruised, and there were several deep gashes along its legs and torso. The most concerning injury was a large, jagged wound on its hind leg, which seemed to be infected. The pain was so intense that the baby lion couldn't even lift its head to seek comfort from its mother. It was clear that the cub was in desperate need of medical attention, but what was even more alarming was how the lioness had carried the baby all the way to the hospital. The question that hung in the air was, How had the lioness known to bring her cub here? Hospitals are not places where wild animals typically seek refuge, and yet this lion had traveled miles, crossing fields and forests to reach the one place where she believed help could be found. It was an incredible journey, one that demonstrated both the lioness's unwavering determination and her trust in the human caretaker she had known from a time long past. The nurse, who had once worked in the hospital's wildlife treatment center, was familiar with the story of this particular lioness. Years ago, the lioness had been brought to the hospital after sustaining injuries in a hunter's trap. She had been brought in by local wildlife experts, and the nurse was one of the first to attend to her. After a long and difficult recovery process, the lioness had regained her strength and was released back into the wild. During that time, the nurse had cared for her, ensuring that she received the best medical attention and nurturing her back to health. Over the course of that healing process, the nurse had formed an emotional bond with the lioness. It was a bond built on trust, compassion, and mutual respect. What made this situation even more remarkable was the idea that the lioness had somehow remembered the nurse and the hospital where she had received care. Perhaps, in her search for help, the lioness instinctively recalled the kindness she had been shown in the past. With her baby in distress and no other option available, the lioness had brought her injured cub to the very place where she had once found sanctuary. It was a testament to the power of the connection between the lioness and the humans who had once helped her. But how had the lioness known that this hospital was still capable of offering help to her baby? Did she sense the familiar energy of the nurse who had once cared for her? It was an unknown mystery, but the nurse couldn't help but wonder if the lioness had somehow recognized her as the one person who could save her cub. This wasn't just a random visit. It was a mother's desperate act of love, a mother willing to travel great distances and face incredible danger to ensure her child's survival. The baby lion's injuries were a direct result of a tragic accident that had occurred deep in the wild. The cub had been playing near the edge of a cliff when it lost its footing and fell, tumbling several feet down the rocky terrain. The mother lion, hearing her cub's cries, had rushed to its side. In an act of bravery, the lioness managed to carry the injured cub on her back for miles, never leaving its side, and hoping beyond hope that she could find help. The deep cuts and bruises on the cub's body were a reminder of the treacherous journey it had endured. This was more than just a mother trying to save her child. It was a powerful demonstration of the lengths to which a mother will go when faced with the impossible. The lioness's decision to bring her baby to the hospital, where the nurse who had once saved her own life now stood ready to help, was a powerful symbol of unconditional love and trust. The nurse knew this was a moment that would stay with her forever, and she immediately began preparing to help the baby lion in any way she could. The connection between them had been re-established, and the journey of healing, both physical and emotional, was about to begin. As the nurse stood over the baby lion, her heart raced with a mixture of fear and compassion. The cub's condition was dire, and it was clear that immediate medical attention was required. But what happened next left her speechless and overwhelmed with emotion. As she gently examined the baby lion's injuries, she noticed something that triggered a wave of memories. Memories that were both bittersweet and incredibly personal. The lioness, whom the nurse had once cared for, was not just a patient to her. She was a part of the nurse's life. Someone the nurse had formed an unspoken bond with during a time of healing and recovery. Years ago, the nurse had worked tirelessly to save this very lioness, who had been caught in a hunter's trap. The lioness had been severely injured, and it was a miracle that she had survived the ordeal. The nurse had dedicated countless hours to her care, tending to her wounds and ensuring she regained her strength. Over the course of that recovery, something beautiful happened. The lioness began to trust the nurse in a way that transcended the typical patient-caregiver relationship. It was as though the lioness understood that this human, despite the differences in species, was there to help and protect her. What made this discovery even more emotional for the nurse was the realization that the lioness had somehow remembered her, and more than that, had brought her baby to her for help. The deep emotional connection between the two had never truly ended, even though time and distance had passed. The nurse had cared for the lioness with unwavering devotion, and now the lioness had returned the favor by trusting the nurse to care for her cub in its time of need. It was a powerful reminder of the profound bonds that can form between humans and animals, and the nurse was overwhelmed with gratitude, awe, and a deep sense of responsibility. But the true reason behind the nurse's tears was not just the lioness's return. It was the realization that this baby lion, the one that lay before her, was a living symbol of her past work and the deep connection she had formed with the lioness. The nurse had helped to bring the lioness back to life, and now the lioness was asking for her help again, this time to save her own cub. It was as though the circle of care and compassion had come full circle, and the weight of that realization hit the nurse all at once. As the nurse gently touched the baby lion's paw, she felt a flood of emotions. She remembered the days spent caring for the lioness, the late-night feedings, the soothing words, and the quiet moments when the lioness had looked into her eyes with a trust that words couldn't describe. Now, in front of her, stood the legacy of that connection, a small, vulnerable cub in desperate need of help. The baby lion's injuries were grave, but the nurse's dedication to healing it was unwavering. She knew that she would do everything in her power to save this little life, just as she had done for the lioness all those years ago. The tears that streamed down the nurse's face were not tears of sorrow, but of gratitude and love. She realized that this moment was not just about saving an animal. It was about honoring the deep bond that had been created between her and the lioness. The lioness had come back, not only to seek medical assistance, but to ask for something far greater, to give her cub the chance at life that she herself had been given. In that moment, the nurse understood that the bond between them was unbreakable, a bond formed through compassion, trust, and a shared sense of survival. As she began to prepare the medical supplies to treat the baby lion, the nurse whispered softly, "I'll help you, baby, just like I helped you." She knew that she had a chance to give the cub the same hope and care that had been given to the lioness years before. But more than that, she knew that she was witnessing something extraordinary, something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The nurse's tears were a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of bonds that transcend species, and the incredible journey of healing that she was about to embark on once again. The bond between the lion, its baby, and the nurse was far more than a simple act of medical care. It was a profound, life-changing connection that transcended words. As the nurse looked down at the baby lion, she could feel the weight of the moment settling deep within her heart. This was not just a wild animal in need. This was a living, breathing testament to her past work, to the trust and compassion she had given so freely years ago. In that fleeting moment, she realized that the lioness, whom she had once saved, had come back to her, carrying the same trust and belief in the bond they had formed. The nurse's heart ached as she remembered the countless hours spent tending to the lioness's wounds, comforting her in her most vulnerable moments. She had been the lioness's savior when the creature had been in dire need, broken and desperate. The lioness had been brought in with severe injuries after being trapped, and the nurse had worked tirelessly to nurse her back to health. Over time, something extraordinary happened. It wasn't just about providing medical care, it was about building a relationship. The nurse didn't just heal the lioness's body, she had healed a part of her soul. The lioness, in her own way, had learned to trust the nurse, to lean on her in moments of vulnerability. It was a bond forged through empathy, kindness, and unwavering dedication. And now, years later, the lioness had returned, not just as a mother, but as a symbol of that connection, bringing her baby to the nurse for help. In that moment, the nurse felt a rush of emotions. She had always known that the work she did with animals was important, but she had never fully understood the depth of the impact it had on both the creatures she cared for and herself. This encounter with the lion and its baby had changed everything. It was a reminder that the bonds we form with others, whether human or animal, are not bound by time or distance. They are threads that connect us across lifetimes, built on a foundation of trust and love. For the nurse, this emotional encounter was a turning point. As she carefully tended to the baby lion's injuries, she realized that this was more than just a job. It was a calling. The connection she shared with the lioness, and now with its cub, was proof of the healing power of compassion. It wasn't just about saving lives. It was about making an impact on those lives, no matter how small or large. The nurse had seen countless patients over the years, but nothing compared to the emotional weight of caring for this lion and its baby. It was as if the universe had brought them together again, in a moment of perfect harmony, to remind her of the profound beauty of her work. As she administered the necessary treatment to the cub, the nurse found herself reflecting on her journey. She had always been drawn to animals, and it was this deep, unspoken connection that had fueled her desire to care for them. But this experience, this incredible act of the lioness returning to her, revealed something even deeper. It was not just about what she could do for the animals. It was about what they gave her in return. The trust, the love, and the understanding they offered were more than she could have ever imagined. This moment with the lion and its cub was a reminder that the work she did wasn't just about healing wounds. It was about touching lives in ways that could never be measured. The emotional impact of this encounter was undeniable. For the nurse, the bond she had formed with the lioness, and now with its cub, would forever change her. It was a lesson in unconditional love and trust, a reminder that no act of kindness goes unnoticed, and that the work she did had the power to change the world, one life at a time. In caring for this baby lion, the nurse realized that her role was more than just that of a caregiver. She was a guardian of these creatures, a protector of the bond between human and animal. And as she looked into the eyes of the baby lion, she knew that the connection between them would last forever, changing her life in ways she could never have imagined. This incredible story of compassion and unlikely heroes began with a lion, once a patient at the hospital, now a mother in desperate need of help. The lioness, having survived a traumatic experience years ago, had formed a bond with the nurse who had cared for her. This bond, forged through compassion and trust, was the catalyst for what happened next. When her baby lion was severely injured and needed urgent care, the lioness did the unimaginable. She returned to the very place where she had been healed, bringing her cub to the nurse who had once saved her. The moment the lion entered the hospital, carrying her injured baby, the atmosphere shifted. The hospital staff, shocked and unsure of how to react, watched in awe as the lioness calmly approached, seeking help for her cub. But the true depth of this encounter came when the nurse, upon recognizing the lioness, realized the profound connection they shared. As she cared for the baby lion, the nurse was overwhelmed with emotion, understanding that this moment wasn't just about medical treatment. It was about the unconditional love and trust that had been built between them. This story serves as a testament to the power of compassion, showing that connections formed through kindness can transcend species and time. The nurse's emotional discovery of the lioness's return was a reminder that the work she did went far beyond treating wounds. It was about forming bonds that changed lives, both human and animal. The lioness's act of bringing her cub to the nurse was not only a call for help, but also a beautiful example of how love and trust can endure, even in the most unexpected ways. In the end, the lioness and her baby left the hospital with a renewed sense of hope. The nurse, forever changed by this encounter, understood the true meaning of her work, making a difference not just through physical healing, but through the connections that bind us all. The power of compassion, of helping one another in times of need, transcended everything, proving that even the most unlikely heroes, a lion and a nurse, can change the course of a life, and in doing so, make the world a little more compassionate. As we wrap up this incredible story, we are reminded of the profound power of compassion and the unexpected bonds that can form between us and the world around us. The lioness and her baby taught us that love, trust, and gratitude can bridge even the widest divides, transcending species and time. It's a reminder that acts of kindness, no matter how small, can leave a lasting impact, and that sometimes the most unlikely heroes are the ones who teach us the greatest lessons. So, what can we learn from this heartwarming encounter? The true power of compassion is that it knows no boundaries. It can heal wounds, form unbreakable bonds, and create moments that change everything. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What did this story teach you about compassion and connection? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and spread the message of kindness and hope to everyone around us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for watching.